Welcome to the DFS Build NFL edition. We are getting ready to look at the Week 4 Thursday night football game between the Giants and the Cowboys. 6-point spread, 46 game total. Looks like it could actually be decent, which is not something I ever thought I would say about a New York game. But doesn't really seem like there's going to be a lot of defense here. Either way you look at it, we're going to break it down. Hopefully we can help you out. If we do, give this video a like and also subscribe to the channel. All right, Taylor, let's get into it. Let's just look at the top captains we want to play, and then we'll work ourselves over to the flex. I don't know if there's flex ownership available right this second. No. So it's just we're looking at captain ownership, and I don't know how much we can really trust that captain ownership. But still, we can give everybody an idea as to who we like and where we're going when it comes to strategy. So up top, Malik Neighbors, CeeDee Lamb, they both look awesome. And then you have the quarterbacks, Dak, Prescott, and Daniel Jones. Those look like the top 4 plays of that group. Which one do you like to captain the most right now?
Probably Neighbors. Hard to argue with his target share, which is through the roof, especially in the last 2 games. Do you think Dallas, like a Dallas build, is going to be chalky? Because I assume they're favored in this game. I haven't actually looked at the odds yet.
Yeah.
So Neighbors obviously won't be contrarian. He might be the top overall play in the game, but he's the guy I'm getting to the most in captain. Second would be Daniel Jones. Obviously, his QB has some rushing upside. The Dallas defense has been horrible so far, particularly against the run.
Mm-hmm.
So in theory, he could potentially find some running lanes. CeeDee and Dak both look great. I'm not sure what's up with CeeDee over the last couple of games. I think he scored 2 games ago, but no showed in the last game. Dak went off, aided by a rushing touchdown and lots of garbage time. Great plays, but I'm getting to both of them more in the flex than the captain so far.
Yeah, it's just gonna be interesting to see what the updated ownership ends up being. I think it's for the most part, I'm looking at just those top 4 options. I'm actually like pretty interested in Daniel Jones because he's not going to carry much ownership at all in the captain slot. Either he has some success, which by the way, Dallas has really had a tough time with mobile quarterbacks so far. I think they have given up like 120 yards on the ground to quarterbacks and like 3 scores, neither of which rank very well compared to the rest of the league. Daniel Jones is now in his 4th week for this season, removed from his ACL tear, which was early last year. So I'm feeling less and less concerned about that. Let's just take a quick look at his rushing numbers so far. 8 attempts last week, 20 yards, 5 the previous. So like 5+ carries in each of his 3 games. We know he can be an explosive runner. He's been actually pretty decent lately through the air as well. And he's got Malik Neighbors, who we know is awesome. So Neighbors and CeeDee, I have a lot of exposure to them in the captain. Obviously, I'm going to put them in the flex pretty much every lineup I do. But Daniel Jones unowned in the captain with a pretty good projection. Actually, it's the best projection of the slate because he can run. So if he's going to be unknown, he might be my favorite captain right now. But I will definitely still get exposure to all 4 of those guys you mentioned. The matchup is not quite as soft as you would think going against the Giants, but I'm just not going to really concern myself too much with that because all these matchup details kind of go out the window when you start looking at divisional game, short week, all this other stuff. So I'm not that worried about that much.
It's also a showdown, so you can't really get too bogged down in that. You kind of have to play people regardless.
Like, what are you going to do?
You
not play the quarterbacks or something? It's just stupid. So
you can't just play 6 Giants or 6 Cowboys by themselves. So.
No, you got to play somebody. So anyways, as far as ownership and projection, and honestly, like you said, Dallas defense has not been good. I think Daniel Jones right now looks like my favorite captain play. It's kind of like when we were talking about like Trevor Lawrence and Jaden Daniels. So Trevor Lawrence just sucked, right? And then it was the reverse in that Bengals game where Jaden Daniels, they ended up winning that game. They dominated that game. But Jaden Daniels went off for like 28 fantasy points. So that's kind of what I'm looking at with Daniel Jones. He is not even top 20 yet in a game this season, but this looks like a spot where he absolutely could. So I think we're pretty much aligned there. It's just going to come down to what the ownership is and what we want to do. Another thing that I really like to do in showdowns, especially if I'm pushing out a lot of lineups, is to establish those core plays, which we know we're going to want probably at least 2 or 3 of those 4 dudes. And what if we slide them over to the flex and we hit that one low-owned captain guy, right? So moving on to the next tier, what guys do you think you feel pretty good about sliding into the captain and being overweight on in the captain slot than the field will be?
Let's see. I'm not really that heavily over on anyone except for Neighbors and Jones, but I don't mind Wandale. He's super cheap, 7,200 in the captain spot.
I like that.
Playing plenty of snaps, about 2/3 of them per game. Targets are typically there. Scored a touchdown, I think, last week or the week before. So solid, cheap play there. I'm around even with the field on Ferguson, Singletary. I think both are perfectly fine. Singletary's been pretty good. Should have scored a touchdown again last week, but took a dive at the goal line.
Didn't on purpose.
Right. He looks good. He's played well. He was good last season. Kind of doesn't seem like a flash in the pan. So I think he's perfectly fine at 12-3 in the captain. Ferguson looked good last week. I think he's fine. I'm pretty heavily under on Lamb and Dak, but that's just kind of a stand I'm taking right now.
Yeah, I love all those calls. I will specifically double down on Wan'Dale Robinson just because, first of all, Darius Slayton is banged up. I don't know for sure if he's like actually at risk of not playing. He has a thumb injury and he's questionable. So we'll see. Not like Darius Slayton playing would make me not want to play Wan'Dale. Wan'Dale in 2 of the 3 games has been highly targeted and racked up catches. He's not going to get a lot of explosive plays. He's not exactly the safest touchdown threat. But he has a role and he's going to be out there for at least 60% of snaps, especially when they go 3 wide out. So I'm with you at that price. Really like him a lot. I would probably prefer him in the flex just because I don't see the ceiling with him, but this matchup overall does look decent and he's really cheap. So that is absolutely the kind of guy, a guy that's going to be out there. He's going to accrue stats that we like to put in the captain slot that will not garner ownership and will allow us to go get all those other dudes. I'm okay with Singletary and Jake Ferguson. I think they're totally fine. Any interest in Brandon Cooks? Obviously he's, geriatric as it gets, and he's, he's not going to be owned. And he actually had a spike week already. I think was it the first week of the season? He had, 14 fantasy points. So last 2 weeks, he came back down to earth, 3.6 and 3.6. He could be needed here a little bit, though, with the Giants probably bracketing CD. So any interest with him, even though he's pretty expensive at 10.2K?
No, I think he's kind of priced out for a captain spot. I can see why you play him, but again, I'm kind of under on the Dallas captain players in general.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I will say you can definitely just take some shots because look at how they played last week. I don't really envision it going that way this time. I think CD's in for a huge game, kind of like we're talking about Jamar Chase last time. But last week, Jalen Tolbert scored. Kevontae Turpin scored. Like all these random dudes were scoring for Dallas. So if they want to go like more like the way of the Bills suddenly, even though they just paid CD all this money and just keep defenses guessing, that could work for them. And, you could hit with some low-owned captain guys like Tolbert and Turpin and perhaps even Cooks. So they're all in play 100%, but I agree with you. You're just kind of guessing, and they look more like flex plays. Here's the other thing that we want to kind of consider. It doesn't look good, but do you have any interest in picking one of these Dallas running backs and captaining them because they're not going to be owned?
If anyone, it would probably be Zeke, just because I imagine they're going to keep giving him the first crack at it. But no is the answer I'm looking for there.
Okay, so if they're winning and they're projected to win, I actually like Zeke a good amount. He's priced out of the captain slot. He's splitting the workload with Rico. I'm not banking on Zeke getting a ton of catches. I'm not even banking on him getting 60% of snaps. We know they're going to split the snaps. But Rico is going to play more if they're losing, right? So if Zeke is going to get 50% of snaps and if he's going to possibly be the guy in the red zone, I think Ezekiel Elliott could be a game breaker this week. So I really like being overweight on Zeke because I just think because of who he's been lately and because he does seem pretty washed. But because of that, he's not going to garner captain ownership at all. And he's probably going to be pretty low owned in the flex spot, more low owned than he probably ever has been. So that's where I stand on the running backs, although Rico is absolutely in play too. One other thing to note is the fact that this game is projected to have some points with 46 total. We do want to consider going away from the logic a little bit. So do you have any interest in because you were on the the Bengals defense in the captain slot? That's
did not go well at all.
I did not say that to tear you down. I'm saying that to let's kind of think outside the box a little bit. Is there any interest in, because think about it. Daniel Jones, historically not great. Cowboys must-win game on a short week. Could the Dallas defense, as talented as it is, come out here and just kick ass and they win like 40-3? Yeah, they could. So any interest in getting small exposure to them and the captain?
I think you can take it a step further and consider the Giants defense and the captain.
Oh dear.
Dallas off. I mean, like you said, the Giants defense really isn't bad. They have quite a bit of talent,
Yeah.
particularly up front. The Dallas offense has been pretty horrible the last couple of games. Even the first game when they crushed the Browns, the offense was not dominating. They have a lot of weapons. They have quite a few big names and stuff, but it's not the most imposing unit. And they did lose some offensive line this past offseason. So
Yeah.
I'm not sold that they're who they were last year when I think they maybe led the league in scoring. And the Giants in captain are 5-4, so you can play them there. Kind of get whatever you want. I think the Cowboys are obviously in play. I mean, Daniel Jones has had turnover issues over the years. He's Daniel Jones. Cowboys defense still has a ton of talent, even if it's underperformed the last couple of weeks. So, yeah, I do have a little bit of both, but not a very hard stance.
Just trying to pull up the stats here real quick of the Giants because they went and traded for Brian Burns, and they what's that guy's name? The other pass rusher they drafted, Kayvon Thibodeau. I think it is. Yeah, Thibodeau. So they have a really good pass rush. They're a little bit of an underrated defense. They have a 13.46% sack rate, number 2 in the league. So they put pressure. Like you said, Dallas did lose key offensive linemen, which has not been good for them. Dak Prescott has at least one turnover in every game so far this year. And by the way, Tony Pollard was banged up a lot last year, and he got a lot of flack for not being like a super reliable fantasy asset. But he was actually still pretty good for their real life team. They don't have a Tony Pollard in the running game anymore. They just have a bunch of guys. So all those things have contributed to Dallas not living up to expectations. Plus, you have the CD holdout, whatever the case may be. I don't hate it. I don't really want to captain the Giants, but I think being overweight on the Giants defense because of just like the Dallas mystique, like everybody just assumes that Dallas will bounce back, right? And they're favored by like almost a touchdown. So I think being overweight on the Giants defense is a pretty cool tournament strategy. In general, though, I am stacking up offense in this game and assuming it's going to be pretty explosive. So going a little bit further in that vein, like with the defenses, also let's look at kickers. Was it Brandon Aubrey? Yeah, he's been crazy. 21 fantasy points in week 1, 17 in week 2, 11 in week 3. That just illustrates again what we're talking about. The Dallas offense is not as reliable as it used to be. So they're moving the ball, but they're not finishing. So I don't really want to captain Aubrey, but do we want to be a little bit overweight on Aubrey just because he's in the good enough offense and he's been kicking? He's been doing really well. And then I think the Giants just brought in Greg Joseph. Don't feel so good about that. But yeah, what's your interest level in Aubrey?
I think I'm going to be under on Aubrey. I feel like this is kind of a classic game where the kicker is going to be overowned. Game logs, they're favored. Giants. I could see him being pretty popular. I mean, it's a showdown, so everyone's going to be kind of popular. Mm-hmm. Aubrey is presumably not going to average like 18 points per game for the season, so I don't mind taking a stand against him and just playing more regular players or defenses over him, or even Joseph. Joseph's cheaper than Aubrey. Who's to say the Giants won't win the game like they did last week against Cleveland? They've actually played pretty well, particularly the last 2 weeks. Obviously, week 1 was a shit show, but they don't really seem that bad. So I'm not convinced Dallas is necessarily a good bet as a nearly touchdown favorite. So in general, I'm kind of over on New York.
Yeah, I think it's just like it's like a numbers game. I think I'm definitely going to play over expectation as far as what you're saying. Like I'm going to be over Giants than the field, right? But I still want to get a lot of offensive exposure to this game because I think it could be pretty explosive. All right, let's work our way to kind of talking about flex plays and punts. So who are guys that are kind of more past those top tiers that we should be considering sliding into flex? Like obviously we say it every time, but really you can play whoever you want in the captain slot. It does happen sometimes where, you know, I had lineups that cashed last week or last Monday. I put in Eric All into the captain and I got everybody from that game that ended up having 71 points in it. So that actually worked out pretty well, and I cashed all over the place when I had those lineups. But that's not necessarily always going to get you to the top, because Eric All had like 8 fantasy points or something like that. But anyways, with that in mind, what are some punt plays that we should be entertaining sliding into flex to round out some good lineups here?
A couple on my radar would be Darius Slayton. If he plays, he's played over 80% of the snaps so far. Hasn't done anything. Malik Neighbors is doing everything, but not a lot to continue. In theory, it's a tough matchup for Neighbors, so maybe Slayton finds some room. I don't mind Theo Johnson either. The tight end for the Giants, he's also played over 80% of the snaps so far. Again, not a lot of targets to go around, but in a one-game slate, I think I'm okay taking shots on that. We've seen Jalen Tolbert. We've seen Kevontae Turpin have big moments so far this season. Not convinced Dak's going to keep spreading it around like that. Usually it's Lamb and Ferguson and then kind of scraps for everybody else, but it has looked a bit different so far. So Tolbert, I think, is okay. Turpin might be kind of a chase after his touchdown last week, but again, in one game sample, you never know what can happen. Beyond that, I'm not really geeked about Deuce Vaughn. Jalen Hyatt's only $600. He might have scored the other day, but
no, he's done nothing.
Kind of a reach. Oh, he did.
I don't think he's done anything at all. I don't think it's a single stat.
He did something, but I don't know. Maybe it was called back.
It must have been. He has 2 targets, no catches on the year.
Solid.
14% of the snaps last week. However, if Slayton is out, he's worth a try.
Yeah.
He still could easily fail even with Slayton out. But
he probably will, because Slayton is probably going to fail even if he plays. So
right. Yeah, most likely. But I do think for Showdown, Hyatt is absolutely in play. I think he's in play either way, but he looks like a pretty good, worthwhile punt at $600 in the flex if Slayton is out.
Agreed.
So I agree with everybody you said, and kind of like in that order. But I would definitely agree with what you said about Turpin. Fine play, 4K in the flex. I don't have a problem with it. I just doubt he strikes gold 2 weeks in a row. It was not playing that many snaps, so like for him to bank on him getting a touchdown, it just like feels like a little bit of a reach to do it 2 weeks in a row. You're not getting a lot of volume, not getting a lot of time on the field in general. It's basically like a way worse version of Darius Slayton. So it's as far as like what his role actually is. So I don't feel that good about it. I would much rather just save the cash and upgrade elsewhere and go get somebody like you already mentioned, Theo Johnson. Love that, because he played 81% of snaps last week. Has not been producing because Neighbors has like an ungodly 31% target share or something absurd that you would think is not sustainable. But anyways, 2.4K flex. Theo Johnson's awesome on the slate. Daniel Bellinger at 1.6K. Fine. It's a fine leverage play on Theo, because between the two, Theo's going to garner way more ownership. With you on fading Deuce Vaughn, I don't see how we're going to get ourselves into trouble by not playing the third running back for Dallas, who even in a game where they were losing wasn't getting time on the field. The other guy that I wanted to mention, though, was going to be Tracy for the Giants, the backup running back. He actually got a lot of work last week, 31% of snaps. So even if they're winning, it sounds like they want to play him more. And if they're losing, I would imagine he would be more likely to get worked into the game plan, because he's a former wide receiver, so he can be used in the slot. He can be used as a receiver out of the backfield. So he's a little bit of an athletic offensive weapon that it seems like they're kind of slow playing into the season. So 2.8K, he's probably my favorite punt flex play as far as like getting value, but not taking just this crazy deep dive with like Deuce Vaughn or Luke Schoonmaker, or like, you know what I mean? Like these guys that, they're cheap and they kind of get on the field a little bit, but they don't have a really good role. One more guy, Jalen Brooks. I feel like if you want to play Turpin, why wouldn't you give Jalen Brooks a chance at half the price? He plays just about the same amount of snaps. And even though he's not very productive, I mean, as far as a punt flex play, I think it's certainly viable. I think that about covers all the low end guys. I mean, there's Chris Manhertz plays, but he's just a blocking tight end. I don't really want to do that, even though he's like $800. That's in the name of Reggie Gilliam right there. That's a total Reggie Gilliam play. And if Slayton's out, there is a Smith Marset. He could end up seeing a little bit more work too, so I'd keep an eye on that. But I think that is about it. So let's leave everybody with our number one captain and our number one value play to help build lineups for this week.
Number one captain would be Neighbors, but if you want to go off the board, it would be Jones. Value play I'm highest on is easily Wandale Robinson.
Okay, and for me, I'm going to go value play Tracy, who I just talked about. I think if the trajectory of his snaps continues, he looks like a really good value at 2.8K. And I'm honestly right there with you. I love Neighbors. I think you can rotate Neighbors and CD all you want. I'm going to get them in basically every lineup. But DJ is my favorite tournament captain as things stand. All right, that is going to do it for us. Hopefully this helps you out. If it does, give this video a like and also subscribe to the channel. That way you get notified to all the videos we do. We pushed out an MLB DFS video earlier today, and we'll have the main slate covered at some point later this week. Thanks for watching, and good luck.